Well, hello, Stace. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
I'm good.
Good.
Stacey, tell me and all of our listeners and viewers what you do and where you are before we get going today.
Sure. So my name's Stacey Dunbar. I am currently living in Portland, Oregon, and I am a parent empowerment coach. So what that means basically is I take families who are in patterns and have beliefs or different routines or things that they're trying to undo. They just get in these cycles and I just help them undo those cycles and shift to a more empowered way of walking through their parenting journey.
Mm.
And I came upon this profession about 3 years ago, but really it started many years ago as an owner of, in Portland, I own a Spanish immersion preschool, and I developed this superpower where I'd see families walk in and I'd be able to read kind of their emotional state, what struggles they were going through. And I thought, man, we can provide a great environment in the classroom, but if they go home to families who are super overwhelmed, it's not really going to do the kiddos much good. So it became my focus to really move my teaching from kiddos, to teaching teachers. And now I'm teaching parents. And so my goal is to be able to bring the joy and peace back into the parenting journey for these families.
I love that. You're a parent yourself, Stacey?
I am a parent as well. I have two boys, 18 and 20. Oh, almost 18 and 20, really 19 and 17. But they have taught me so much. And one of the gifts, one of the things I continually return to is your children and the children that you work in if you are in education, but your children in particular are mirrors to you, reflecting back to you all the pieces and parts of you that need some healing and need some love. And so this journey that I've taken with them has been a difficult one in a lot of ways, but it has really allowed me to bring to awareness many of the patterns and behaviors that I needed to let go of. So now I can help other families do it as a parent coach.
I'm going to grab my pen and paper here because Stacey and I want to talk to everyone about how we met because I'm Di Russell. DiLive is my business, and I'm all about success and mindset. And success being, like you've just said, living a life of joy, empowerment, fulfillment. And I'm very focused on thought and the power of thought energy. And I too am a parent of three daughters who are now, the youngest just turned 32, so 35 and 37, and they have their own children now. And what you just said, Stacey, is so true. Like the journey that I went on from the day I became a mother right through until now, my children have taught me so much. And I will admit, for the first good while, I was dragged kicking and screaming through that learning and that revelation. Because like you said, they really do mirror back to us, what we have an opportunity to grow through. And it wasn't always easy, it wasn't always fun, but what I have discovered, and I want to talk more with you and have others tune into this. And we do think that if there's interest out there, we'll continue, Stacey and I, in having these conversations because I think together we bring a lot of richness to the parent space. And particularly, like you were saying earlier, Stacey, Kimmy, my daughter, and I have started a mothers and daughters community for parents to actually come and mothers and daughters to come and help that relationship be the best it can be. So what shall we talk about today, Stacey? I know we've got a long list of things.
So I know that one of the topics that we had brought up was how to manage teens. This is a topic near and dear to my heart because, as you know, my kiddos are just exiting those teens, and just approaching their adulthood. And boy, it's a rough ride for a lot of families. And
Mm.
you hear the rebelliousness, you hear about, different pieces and things like that. But the opportunity again for growth and the shift that you make, that you are needing to make as a human for that age range, is pretty
Mm.
profound, especially for me in particular because my degree is in early elementary education. So I've always taught the littles. I feel super confident in that age group, but dealing with teens was a whole different ball game for me. So we just talked a little bit about the concept of managing teens and the relationship that we have with them.
Yeah. And I do remember, as having daughters, especially when they were younger, people would say to me, "Oh, you're in for a treat when they get to the teenage years." And I remember thinking, okay, well, if I take care of the younger years and build a relationship with these little people, as they become teenagers, I'm sure they don't just turn into a monster overnight. I'm sure it's still just a journey for them, and perhaps we can sail those waters together. And my experience of that was, and I think I conceptually realized this later, was that as teenagers, they're going through enormous amounts of change in their body, in their thinking, in their psyche. They really are becoming individuals after we've been the center of their world for all of that time. And so I won't say I realized it too late, but it did help my understanding that, my girls got to the age where I felt they were pushing me away. I felt that. And of course, that was reflecting my need. I was very codependent, very afraid of rejection and all of those things. So I felt that strongly. However, I did have enough awareness to say they need space to start choosing who they are. And they're going to go to the edge of the earth to discover that. And as a mum, I realized I just have to hold them in love and let them go, which sounds almost an oxymoron, but what do you feel about that? How does
Yeah,
that?
I completely agree with you. I think that I love that last part that you said, hold them in love and let them go. It does seem opposite, but it's not. It actually
No.
isn't. And the part that I often explain to families in the coaching process who, have preschoolers or teens or kiddos who are moving right into their teens at that 10 to 12 age group, those two time periods are actually very similar in that they're moving from a dependence of some kind to an independent phase. I mean, when they were babies, they were 100% dependent on you. And then they move into these preschool years where they learn that they're their own person for the first time. They learn social interaction for the first time. They learn how to deal with conflict for the first time and rejection for the first time. All of these things come up and they want to assert themselves, and they understand that the power of power, asserting themselves and the need for attention and how to get that in positive and negative ways. The teenage years are really very similar to that, except the stakes are a lot higher. So
Isn't that the truth?
it is the truth. And even if you read books or things about the way their brain is forming, their brain is forming all of these synapses and electrical responses based on the stimuli during those two time periods. And it's like they structure their brain. It's like building a house, and the house is like 3/4 of the way built. And then they enter the teenagers and they decide, no, that's actually not what I wanted the house to look like. I want to tear down this room and add an addition here that's a little bit different. And, so they tear some of it down. And that's really hard for a teen to go through and then rebuild it. And it's different than the house that you thought it was going to be, the
Yes.
house that they decided that they wanted instead. And so the bumps and bruises that go along with that are really hard. So my biggest piece of advice is really, in general, no matter what age your child is, but particularly in the teens, but in general, stop talking so much and do more modeling and do more listening, especially in the teenage years. They want that independence.
Yes.
They
Do you
want
know?
to listen. They want you to listen, even though
Yeah.
they're saying things that you won't agree with, that you think is
No.
the wrong way to go. But it's just, you have to remind yourself, okay, pretend they're 4 or 3 or 4 again. You let them climb up the play structure knowing that they're probably going to fall because they're not going to do it quite right, but you let it happen and you let that failure happen because that's how they learn. It's the same process in the teenage years, except like I said, the stakes are a lot higher, and it's really hard for a parent to hold their breath and be like, okay, here
So
are the
this is
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is interesting. There's 3 points here that I want to dig deep into. The high stakes in the teenage years, the power of power you talked about as little toddlers start to find, oh, yeah, I can do this. And they start to feel that independence in some form. And also us as parents, what we see, because like you said, we, from the time they're little, we have a vision for them. We want them to be, I didn't want my girls to be me, but I wanted them to be better than me. I wanted them to be, but I don't think I started out thinking I want them to be the best version of themselves. I don't think I actually consciously thought that. I thought, I know the best way for this little one. That's what I was thinking. And that's true to a point. Like, I'm their mother, I can nurture them. But I think starting from the place of what do we see for our children, and really as they get older, it's like, what do they see for themselves? And we're there to be their cheerleaders and their supporters when they fall from the playground equipment. And like you said, the older you get, the bigger the loss in a way. And here's a bit of a thing, Stacey, I'll be keen to hear what you think about this, but I became aware that a lot of people in my generation had grown up. I was such a people pleaser and I just wanted mum and dad to be proud. So I was wanting to be what they wanted me to be. And I started betraying myself, what I wanted for me. I started to just put that aside and be what I thought they wanted me to be. And I feel like I saw a lot of people in their 40s, leaving their marriages, leaving their families to go and be themselves because they just, become the lawyer, the doctor, the whatever, and they couldn't do it anymore. So I feel like in the teenage years, as much as it scares us as parents to let them go and just stop talking, stop advising, and just say, what do you think? What do you feel? It's scary to do that, but I feel like if they do it then, they're less likely to just break that house down at 40, 45 and have to rebuild.
Right. And if you've been doing it all along, not just in the teenage years, but you've, had that kind of mindset throughout the parent journey, then they have a pretty solid sense of self. And I was just explaining this to a family earlier today that I was coaching. That's not always an easier way to walk through the path with your child. Like, it's really great to hang around a people pleaser because they're really easy, and but the reason why they're people pleasers is because they've abandoned themselves. They have been trained by fear, obligation, and guilt and are shamed into behaving a certain way to fit a box that the parent felt like they needed to fit in. And a lot of it is well meaning, like they want them to fit into society and, but it creates a way for them to abandon themselves. But when you don't do that, when you allow for the child to have space to be unconditionally loved and be whoever they are, both the dark parts and the light parts, well, then you've got to deal with the dark parts, and that isn't always super fun, right? So, you have bigger tantrums and you have big feelings and you have to hold space for that. And you have to be super grounded and solid in yourself
Yes.
to be able
Yes.
to handle all of those phases, especially in the teenage years when they have no filter. They become a little bit more narcissistic, which is age appropriate to be a little bit more narcissistic. I know that's a buzzword right now, but they become very
Mm.
self-centered and they're very quick to judge and do a lot of black and white thinking and things that aren't
Yeah.
super healthy in a lot of ways, but it is age appropriate for the phase. And if you don't have
And
thick skin, if you're not solid, you're in trouble,
yeah.
parent.
And
You're going to be a pony.
Stacey, yeah, when we say two things, so narcissistic, tell me really what that means.
Wow, it's such a loaded word right now. I mean, narcissistic in a non-clinical diagnosis, which most people are using, is to me a lot of people who have emotional wounding, who are not very emotionally intelligent, who are emotionally mature. Well, guess what? It's appropriate for kids to be emotionally mature. Their brain is still forming and growing. And what research shows is empathy, which people who are narcissistic and identified as a narcissist, like truly,
Mm.
identified through testing as a narcissist, they lack empathy. And
Mm.
and empathy matures in your brain at age 27. So we're
Yeah.
planting seeds on the parent journey for a long time to develop empathy. And so a lot of our parenting is very fear-based, like, oh my gosh, they're so self-centered, or oh my goodness, they're so entitled, or oh my goodness, this or that, and those are quote unquote narcissistic qualities. But some of it is age appropriate. But when you're
Yeah.
parenting through fear instead of love, then a lot of
Yes.
times we recreate those scenarios. We push them to
Yeah.
that behavior instead of modeling what's healthy, staying grounded in what's healthy. And this is what I return back to you, like you coach the person, not the problem. It's you that
Yes.
you need to constantly look at to make sure that you're grounded, to make sure that you're healed, to make sure that
Yeah.
you're parenting from a place of security so that
And
you
that's,
can feel secure.
yeah, that's our foundation, isn't it? It's interesting starting mothers and daughters because I have a lot of mothers saying, oh, this will be so good. My daughter needs to blah, blah, blah. And having been through that with my own journey, I am so aware that it's less about what our daughters need or our children need and more about what we are required to get to in our own grounding, like you said, to be very secure in who I am so that I can come from a place of love, not fear. Because when I do that, I can set my teen free and know that no matter what they choose, my love will always be there. Sure, there'll be messes, and I've got much I could talk about there. However, the joy of it is through the mess, they discovered who they are, in that right there, so they can move on from there. Otherwise, yeah, we are crippling them, really, and that's what I mean. You see these 45-year-old people that don't know who they are. And so life becomes really a dark place then. And it's hard when you have all that responsibility to then take the break that gives you that, yeah, the leeway to find out who you are. The power of power. And let's talk about that. I've got a little 14-month-old granddaughter who right now is teaching me so much. Every time I see her and I feel the joy coming from her, she's just in love with life, and curious and alive. And I think that's what we all have in us, this power of life. And over time, we start to put a lot of stuff over the top of that. What can you tell me about this in teenage? Let's go to the teenage years and where they're starting to feel this uprising in them. And I would say the ones that cause the most headaches for parents are actually the strongest, the ones that really do feel their power because they're not prepared to deny themselves in order to please a parent, but they still want the relationship, but they're not going to be the ones to sacrifice themselves for the relationship.
That's true. So, just to back up before I go to teens, every human on this planet wants two things. They want power and they want attention. And everyone has a bucket. And every day, power and attention needs to fill that bucket. And if you don't fill that bucket, then people are going to seek it in more negative ways or any way that they can in order to get that bucket filled. So, when they're little, starting in the preschool years again, they start tackling that power and attention bucket, and you can be my friend and you can't, and all that social stuff starts happening in the younger years. And then you hit the teenage years, and what research shows is 0 to 12 is basically all you got to plant the seeds. You plant all the seeds of the values you want to instill and the strengths you want to embody and everything that you feel that you quote unquote need to do as a parent. And basically from 12 on, kiddos are making their own decisions. And so that's where that's that second phase of letting go. And part of that is they want to feel that they are empowered to make those decisions. And if you, even if it's good intentioned, are micromanaging and looking at their homework and making sure it's done all of the time, or, all of these well-intentioned things that honestly 20, 30 years ago, no, parents did not do that. This is a new phenomenon of us really feeling like we're responsible to make sure the way our kids turn out is really up to us instead of up to the
Yeah.
child, which
Yeah.
yes and no. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but they want to feel the power, and we need to show them through quiet confidence to make those choices, knowing that they're going to fall flat on their face, but empowering them to make those decisions and then being there for them to get up and try again, get up and try again. I'm here. I'm right here for you. I trust you. You got this. Even though in your head
Mm,
that is not the right decision, and then it's going to
mm,
fail. Let them fail. You're there for them. Get up and
mm,
try again. That's how they build resilience. That's how they'll build self-esteem. That's how they build confidence. And that
mm.
makes them feel empowered.
It's
You actually
interesting.
gain power through making errors.
That's right. And as you were talking, I was, thinking about the walking process when we have a little baby and they're starting to walk. Now, for initially, we're holding them. But when we know that they have the strength in their own legs and their balance and everything, we let them go. We know they will fall. But why do we let them go? Because, and this is into what I teach day in, day out, is about the vision we hold. So what am I seeing for my little one that's learning to walk? I know without a shadow of a doubt they'll walk. So they feel that. And actually, the universal laws, the law of attraction, all of that we live in, what I see and believe is what I will attract the opportunity for and all the resources for. And so when I look at a little one and say, I know you're going to talk and walk and do all these things, I know, like I know. I don't even talk it to them. I don't say that, but I believe it and they feel that. When we're teenage parenting, like you said, the stakes are high. We start to see all the things that could go wrong. And actually, we hold that, was my experience. I was holding that as my picture, and I have to protect you and I have to steer you. Whereas if I come from a place of love and see that, I've given them all I've given them and I know they're good to go. And now they're going to step into more of who they are and start walking their own prescribed journey. Yes, they'll fall like when they were learning to walk, but I know they're going to get where they are meant to be going on this life journey, which is theirs. That's really important, I think, as a parent. And it is not easy in the teenage years when the stakes are high. And I've been right to the edge and back with many of my daughters. They all had circumstances and some really, really life threatening, literally. But to be able to let go and say, this is your journey. The thing that I found hardest was the guilt, other parents watching on, that whole ego of, I've got these beautiful children and aren't they doing well? And like you said, my firstborn was such a people pleaser. And it was so lovely to say to people, yes, isn't she delightful? But was she joyful? Was she actually loving life? And she was the one that sat me down one day talking about what was going on. And she said, Mum, I don't want your advice. I just want you to listen to me.
That's right.
She would have been about 15 at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest tools. If people listening to this walk away, they want a little tool for their toolbox for being a parent. One of the best tools you can say for your teen is before when they start talking, are you wanting me to listen or do you want my feedback? And they'll tell you right away, I only want you to listen. And then at the end, after they get it out, maybe you can return to it. I have some feedback. Are you open for it?
Yes.
Maybe no. And that's
Yes.
okay,
That's right.
it's letting them lead. You're now letting them lead over and over.
Yes.
That's filling their power bucket by allowing
Yeah.
them to lead.
Exactly. I remember a day one of my daughters came to me asking to do something. She would have been about 15. I think she was nearly 16. She had to go somewhere. She wanted to go somewhere, and I decided to help, to help her gain her strength. And I said, I can tell you what I think around this scenario. I'm going to tell you that, but that's just my impressions and my opinion. But at the end of the day, it's your life and you're making decisions for your life, which is going to be what plays out from your decisions. So I'll tell you what I see, good and bad. And then I'm not going to tell you you can or you can't. You can take that away and mix it with what you know and then make your decision. And I remember the energy she came to me with was, I want to go to this and can I? And as I discussed all of that, she almost backed away very thoughtfully with, so a very different energy, like, yeah, she wasn't having to confront me. She was actually now going away very contemplative and understanding, this is my decision alone,
She
really.
didn't feel backed into a corner. Another word that comes up that I want to throw out there as like a little tool just to think about is coming from a place of curiosity,
Yeah.
and so an example that I can give for my son, and this was actually in middle school, he, came to me one day. He's like, Mom, I want you to know that during recess, we're going to leave the school premises. There's a Dairy Queen. I don't know if you guys have Dairy Queen. It's at a little ice cream place. There's a Dairy Queen right down the street. We're going to go and we're going to get an ice cream cone. And so instead of
Yeah.
leading, I said, I just came from a place of curiosity. Oh, okay. And so, what is the consequence? Do you understand what the consequence is if you do get caught?
Mm.
And he talked it out with me. Yes, I understand that this is going to happen, and then this will happen, and this and that. And are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sticks out in my mind because he backed away, just like you said. There was, when I don't have an attachment to an outcome, and this is going to speak to your thinking process. Like, when you don't have an attachment to an outcome, they will go to college. They will, excel in this sport. They will
Yeah.
get this grade. If you don't have an attachment to an outcome and you show them that you trust them, it feels it feels scary, and it feels like the opposite of what you should do, but actually you're energetically trusting them.
Yes.
Holding space for them that they screw up, being the solid sounding board, providing good advice when needed, setting boundaries when appropriate and when needed to keep them safe. Like, I'm not saying don't set boundaries or do any of those things. I'm just saying that if you come with that curiosity energy and that lack of attachment, but it's actually love instead of fear-based, then you will actually get the result you want much more frequently. But it's easier said than done.
Yes, easier said than done.
Yeah.
That's the essence of all of this. And you and I both come from the same place. There's only fear and love that we can come from in any interaction, in any moment. And I'm very well aware of the cascading effect of thought, no matter where it's coming from. But the overriding thing, and I want to encourage all of us as parents with this, the overriding truth is the very essence of us is love. So when I look at my 14-month-old granddaughter, she doesn't know how to think judgmentally, guiltily, anything like that. She's just joy, very in touch with the source of life in her, and it's just coming through. She might cry because she falls over, or she's hungry, or she's got dirty pants. But once that's fixed, she doesn't hold a grudge. She doesn't think. She's just being. And that really encourages me because, like you said, Stacey, how hard it is when we feel like we can control our teenagers and we think we're doing that from a place of love. It's like my little young daughter at 2 wanted to run across a highway. I'm holding her hand. She's putting on a tantrum, doesn't want to hold my hand, wants to run. She's going to get hit by a truck.
Right.
So I won't let her do that because that's age appropriate. But now we see so many more trucks and so much more damage that can be done. And by trying to control my daughters, what was I actually energetically communicating to them? You can't trust you. You don't have what it takes to live the life age appropriate for where you are. And so as parents, there's so much that, like you said, Stacey, we need to get grounded in and really think through, rather than just doing habitually what we experienced as teenagers and becoming our parents. We want to become the parent that actually does genuinely, deeply love our children.
Right.
Our teenagers. Yeah.
And it's tricky work because the pressure of society, especially for women, if your child doesn't quote unquote turn out right or do well, the first people they point the finger to is the mother, and it's all your fault, and you did this and you should have done that. And, honestly, there's more and more research coming out about habitable traits, and
Yeah.
the research is showing more and more, you're born with what you're born. You can't make somebody change into something unless they decide to do it. But what you can do as a parent is, if they have these habitable traits, you can grow them, right? And they might not be the ones that you wanted or that you think that they need, but these traits that they have in them that are innate in them, that's who they are. So your only role is to grow those traits and to grow them on their path but it's their path. You're not
Yeah.
steering the wheel as much as you think you are. But in our society today, parents are really made to feel like we are 100% responsible for the outcome of the child and their
Yeah.
happiness and their success. And so there's this explosion of parenting books that have come out
Mm.
since the 1970s. The word parenting didn't even exist until then. And it's
Yeah.
called child rearing. And
Mm.
so we were rearing the child. Now we're parenting. It's like even the connotative definition of it, if you think about it, is pretty loaded. And so I would love and encourage families to move back to the concept of being more detached and like, I'm walking this path alongside you, but you're leading the path, and I'm here just as your support system. And that's
Yeah.
especially critical in the teen years when they want to feel like they're in charge.
I like what you said about the innate, because I feel like for me, it's like a seed. Each of us has a seed of life in us, which is looking to be grown and expressed into a physical, visible form and forms, just like a tree. So, if I had a baby carrot, so a carrot seed, and I was determined to make that thing into a beetroot, it's
Right.
going to be impossible and not very comfortable for that poor little carrot seed. So each of us and our teenagers, our children included, have that seed, like you said, and our job, I really understand this now, is to just nurture them. When I'm growing a plant, I'm not trying to alter the seed. I'm just giving the seed what it needs to mature and grow and thrive. And for us to tune into that, we have to come from a place of love, not fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful metaphor that you just used. And that is exactly describing what I try to bring to consciousness with the families that I work with because
Yeah.
of the pressures that we have felt and have been taught. And it's backfiring. I mean, look at our kiddos, the rates of anxiety and depression in the teenage years.
Yeah.
Yes, social media, yes, other things, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're really being a parent in a way that takes away their power and makes them feel like we are 100% responsible for their outcome. And it's just so fear based. It's so unhealthy. It's so codependent in nature to begin with. And
Mm.
so it is doing no one any favors. Parents aren't enjoying themselves, like they're not enjoying their journey as a parent. Kids are
No.
suffering, their self-esteem suffering, everyone has
Mm.
anxiety and depression because of it. Like it just really
Mm.
needs to shift. It really does.
It- It's interesting because the spirit in us, like I say, of the little 14-month-old, doesn't change. We all still have that throughout life, but it's smothered with, like you said, many, many things that society, which is us collectively, believe in and practice. And so one of the practices I came across, I would say too late in my life, my children had well grown, but now I have grandchildren, and I became aware that I'd been teaching my children to be focused on what I wanted by saying to them, I'm really proud. I talked about how I felt about what they'd done. And so then I started to understand, if I say to them, wow, that I'm really delighted at that you've done. How do you feel about that? Do you feel proud of yourself? Does that resonate at a deep level with you? Are you loving that? So therefore helping, like you said, giving them recognition and consciousness about the power they have to live who they are and to encourage them. Like it's going to look very different for every single one of them. But does it fit the norm? And why would we want it to fit the norm? When you just want them to be so full of joy at every stage, even simple things like getting dirty. I've got grandsons, a lot of grandsons, and they just love to get into the dirt and climb on things, and they just can seem like, wow, what's going on here? But it's just them expressing age appropriately what they're curious about and wanting to be involved in. And I think, oh, it's so easy for us to unknowingly suppress that.
Right. Yeah, I think I was listening to Ram Dass, spiritual teacher, and he was talking about the container, your spirit's inside of you, and it has this light that it can shine, but then over time, as you grow up, you build this container, and it's all these defense mechanisms. It's all these different things that you've learned through your school experience, through social interactions, through your wounded parent, through, like all of these things. And you create all of these defense mechanisms that like hide your spirit, that you think you're protecting your spirit, but really you're just not letting it shine anymore. And that makes me so sad. And that's part of the reason why I love teaching little ones, because their spirit hasn't been suppressed
Yes.
yet through societal,
Yes.
just horrible generational patterns that we have. It hasn't been suppressed
Yeah.
yet. So it's just beautiful to witness it and try to keep that fire burning as long as I can, with the littles as long as I can
I
before
love that.
society gets to them. Yeah.
And our question, I'll get you to read it out before we finish here. As you were talking about that suppression of the spirit, I have one daughter in particular who I admired through the parenting younger years because she was so out there, so curious, so bold. And I kept thinking I had to get her to do as I would ask, but I didn't know how to do that without breaking her spirit. And I didn't want to break her spirit. So it was a bit of a messy road. And so we'll probably talk more about that. I'd like to talk more about that because if we let their spirit soar, then they're going to be guided so much more strongly. But once we start to clip somebody's wings, how then do they navigate their way forward? How do we expect them to do that when we've taken away from them their power and their guidance? What was our question today, Stacey? Just so that we can wrap it up, the question that we were talking from.
We were just talking about managing parent-teen relationships and how to make them stronger,
Mm.
and I think, again, it comes back to careful listening and coming from a place of curiosity. I think those are the two main points that you can walk away
Yeah.
with as little tools for your tool chest. Less
Yeah.
talking, more listening.
Yeah. So that we can discover who they are with them.
Mhm.
I like that. Well, thank you. And I hope all of you listening and watching this have enjoyed it. Please pop it in the chat or get a hold of us and let us know what your questions are around parenting, or what is it meant to be called, Stacey? What's a better name for parenting?
I like to call it child rearing. I even fumbled a little bit during this conversation, and that parenting is just such a common word now, but I don't want to use it because I just feel like I'd rather call it
Mhm.
child rearing or
Yeah,
being a parent. You don't say that you're friending, you don't say that you're husbanding
true.
or wifing, or, it's like we've turned this into a verb. And so, like,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
child rearing. Mhm.
Child rearing, yeah, walking the journey of growth with those people that have been gifted to us as our offspring. So yeah, let us know what your questions are. Stacey, how can people get a hold of you?
You're welcome to shoot me an email, me at stacydunbar.com. You can visit my website, stacydunbar.com, and happy to help in any way that I can on your road to being a parent. Mhm.
Yeah, good. And I'm Di at DiLive. Also happy to hear from any of your questions, anything at all, so that you can, really be living a life, no matter what that life entails for you, full of joy, because that's the power that's in us. So thank you so much, Stacey, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much.